They invited me back for a second time. That's nice. You know, for years and years I begged to have a microphone to sing, and they said, no, you can't sing. So I guess what I realize now is I just needed to, well, I'll just speak with a microphone, and they were okay with that, so. Okay, before we get started, I just want to do a little activity. Next slide. What is this? And you can speak. It works better if you speak. Inside of a tire, okay. Adam, you can show them? All right, next. Oh, it's kind of hard to see that, but. Melon.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like something melon. Okay, Adam, next. Coconut. All right, Adam, next one.
Dogtail.
Oh, that one was easy. But wait, next one. This is actually my fictional dog, Isabella, because my wife won't let me get a real one, so that's what that is. But what the purpose of this was is sometimes when we go into a text like Cain and Abel, we can look at it through too small of a lens, and we can miss something bigger that it's trying to teach us about humanity. And so I want us to go in with this big mindset when we enter into the text today, because I think that the story of Cain can really speak to all of our lives in a very deep way, beyond the fact that we should not murder people, which I hope is a given. So please, premeditated murder is not called for. But let's just pray before we begin. God, we come here, some of us with hardened hearts, some of us who are unsure of what it means to be in a relationship with you. Some of us have been around the church for a long time, and it just doesn't seem to do anything for us anymore. And so I just ask that as we enter into your word today, you would break down those barriers, and you would speak to us in a powerful way, in an overwhelming way, that our lives could be transformed. Amen. Okay, so like I said, big picture. So Cain and Abel had parents, and their names were Adam and Eve. So to start, I just want to move back into the garden for a moment and talk about the fall and what happened there, because I think if we understand that, we'll have a better understanding of what's going on in this story. So Adam and Eve were in the garden, and in the center of the garden was a tree, the knowledge of good and evil, and this was the only tree that they were not supposed to eat from. But then Satan came along, or the serpent, and questioned Eve and said, "Did God really say you can't eat from any tree in the garden?" To which Eve said, "No, we can eat from the trees in the garden. There's one particular tree that we can't eat from." And Satan said, "You know why that is? It's because God doesn't want you to be like him. Because if you eat from that tree, your eyes will be opened and you'll have wisdom. He's holding out from you." And you see, that little seed, that little thought that was put in her head began to make her question as to whether or not God was truly as good as he said he was. Maybe he was holding out. Maybe there was something more. And so, if you've been around the church at all, you know that Adam and Eve took a bite of the apple. And from that moment on, life would never be the same for them. The first thing they did was they put some cover up on, they put some clothing, makeshift clothing on them, because they were separated from each other at that point. That close relationship they had with each other was now removed. And then God, through the cool of the day, came walking, and they hid from God. So now they have separation from God, and they have separation from each other. That's the result of the fall. And I just want to read you a little bit of the curse that was put on Adam. This is Genesis 3:17 to 19. To Adam he said, Because you listened to your wife and ate the fruit from the tree about which I commanded you, you must not eat from it. Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil, you will eat food from it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your brow you will eat your food, until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken, for dust you are, and to dust you will return. So I have 3 points. Separation from God, separation from people, and tension with the rest of creation. Moving out of the garden, east of Eden, this is what we're dealing with. And this is how we're best going to understand the story of Cain together today. So in chapter 4, it picks up, Adam made love to his wife Eve, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Cain. She said, with the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man. Later, she gave birth to his brother Abel. Now Abel kept the flocks, and Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. And Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. That seems a little harsh. Why was Cain's offering not accepted? To be honest, this text actually doesn't tell us. Maybe God is just malicious, and he likes to play games with brothers and say, no, you're not going to get along now, are you? But if we turn to Hebrews 11:4 in the New Testament, it gives us a little bit of a better picture of what was going on in this text. By faith, Abel brought God a better offering than Cain did. By faith, he was commended as righteous when God spoke well of his offerings. And by faith, Abel still speaks even though he is dead. So what this author seems to be telling us is that there was a difference in faith. Well, how does that make sense? They were brothers. They were both raised by Adam and Eve. You would think they would have a similar perspective on life. But we need to make a distinction here, and this is an important distinction between belief and faith. It's not that Cain didn't believe in God. In fact, in James it says even the demons believe. So us believing in God is not that huge of an accomplishment, let's say. But it's taking that belief and turning it into trust. It's entrusting our lives to God that makes it faith. It makes it saving faith. So what we can see here is that even though Cain came with an offering in his hands, he wasn't entrusting himself. He wasn't entrusting the core of who he was to God. It was more of a token of appreciation. And I have a theory, I have a reason for understanding this, as in Genesis 3, we read what? It was through painful toil and sweat of Cain's brow, of Adam's brow, that he would have produced the food, and that would have went on to Cain as well. So here's Cain working in the fields day after day after day by the pain, with painstaking work, he would have produced this food. And then he was supposed to come to God and say, here, thanks for nothing. Thanks for nothing. This was me. I did all this work. And now I'm supposed to be gracious and happy and bring this before you? You see, I think we can identify with this because Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, we all go to work. And we all work really hard to make ends meet. And then on Sunday, we're supposed to come and say, thank you, God. Thank you, God, for what you have done. No, because we kind of believe that it's all us. It was our own hands that did it. Where was God in it? And if this is true, then maybe when God says save it to Cain, he's saying save it to us. If we're going to come here and offer lip service or a little bit of money because we think we're supposed to, God says, don't even bother. And I think this is something that we need to take to heart and we need to take seriously. Because let's admit it, you can go to church your entire life and not entrust yourself to God and not have that kind of faith. There can be believers in the church and no one who takes that next step and says, yes, God, I will trust you. So here in this first section of the passage, we see what? We see that intimate relationship between humanity and God has been separated. It's been tarnished. There's no longer that intimate connection. Moving on. Then the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. Here, once Cain puts aside God as the creator-created relationship, where that should fuel any decision he makes, he now moves into this place where he has a fork in the road. And he can make a decision in accordance with God's will or in accordance with his own will. And let me tell you that when we make decisions in accordance with our own will, they're often based on what? Emotion, anger, jealousy, lust, maybe self-centeredness. And it's okay if you don't believe me. Maybe that's a stretch. But when I look at the divorce rate in the world, when I look at the abuse and the violence in our world, I have a feeling that a whole lot of the decisions that we make on a daily basis aren't attributed to us seeing ourselves in light of God as his created beings that are supposed to live harmoniously with each other. And so here we have the fork in the road. And as we know, Cain took the worst of the two. Now Cain said to his brother Abel, let's go to the field. While they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, where is your brother Abel? I don't know, he replied. Am I my brother's keeper? So Cain made his decision. And it's at this point that some of us can sort of separate ourselves from the text. Well, okay, I might not do everything perfectly, but I haven't murdered my brother in a field. But I want us to come back into the text with this lens. You see, because Jesus, with his famous Sermon on the Mount, said this. You have heard it was said to the people long ago, you shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. You see, we have this idea that there's a bell curve. And maybe anger is down here and murder and rape is up here. But that's not how God's economy works. What God expects is perfection. So either you are perfect or you are not perfect. There is no in between. So you see, we're not that much different than Cain when we make decisions to cheat on people, when we make decisions to gossip about people, when we make decisions to excommunicate and slander people. We're not that much different. Because where God's plan is for us to live in harmony and connection with each other, our plan is something much more dark. We're self-centered and we want to get ahead, and when it comes to dealing with people, we're going to deal with them in the way that best suits us, so we feel. So now we've seen two things. We've seen that Cain is separated from God, and in the ultimate act of murder, he separated himself from humanity. He separated himself from his brother. Now we keep reading. The Lord said, "What have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Now you are under a curse and driven from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hands. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield crops, for you will be a restless wanderer on the earth." Here we see the third concept of the fall, where it's separation from creation. And we don't have to look very far to see ecological disasters and abuse of the earth to recognize that there's something wrong with the way that the world is. And we see it more as a resource than a part of creation that we're supposed to engage in and be a part of in harmony. You see, I think this is where we Christians can get it wrong sometimes. We believe we're here for a short stint and that the earth doesn't really matter. You know, we're going to just beam up to heaven at some point. So who really cares what the world is like right now? But I think that's the wrong idea. And I don't think that's a biblical idea. You see, because at the end, there's a new earth and a new heaven that's created. We were made for the earth. We were made for this creation. And so we can see that even this earth that we live on, is in God's redemptive sight. And we read this in Romans. Oh, it's already up. Brilliant. "For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. For the creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God. We know that the whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth, right up until the present time." And so now we've seen it. We've seen the fall completely take course in Cain's life. Separation from God, separation from people, and this fractured relationship with creation. And then we read on. And this is the first time in this whole passage that Cain actually talks to God. He says, Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is more than I can bear." But I feel like I'm reading this wrong because he just murdered his brother. He estranged himself from God, and now he's at the bottom of the barrel in his life. I feel like he's saying, "My punishment is more than I can bear. Today you are driving me from the land, and I will be hidden from your presence. I will be a restless wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." You see, it's funny that when we come to the bottom of the barrel through our own decisions, that's when we decide to cry out to God. And that's when we decide to say, "This is too much for me." To which God could say, "You got exactly what you wanted. You chose not to entrust yourself to me, so I'm helping you along. In anger and murder, you separated yourself from humanity, so I'm banning you. Go." And creation, maybe it was hard to painfully toil the land, but now you know what? That blessing and gift that I gave you, forget it. That's what God could have said. But the Lord said to him, "Not so. Anyone who kills Cain will suffer vengeance 7 times over." Then the Lord put a mark on Cain, so that no one who found him would kill him. So Cain went out of the Lord's presence and lived in the land of Nod, east of Eden. You see, because even in God's judgment, there is mercy and there is grace. Even when we don't deserve it, He still holds out mercy and grace. Now it's true, this is how Cain's story ends. So I can't tell you if they were ever reconciled completely. But I can tell you this, that even if we are wandering, and even if we have turned our back from God, and we feel like we're swinging around at everyone who's around us in this world, and we feel lost and we feel broken, and even though we can put on a pretty face, we know that inside something is fundamentally wrong with us. We know that there is something not right with us, with the world around us, and with creation itself. Then there's 3 simple things that you can do. Listen to God better, be nicer people, and recycle. No, of course not. That was my 3-point sermon, though, if you wanted that. You can have all the king's horses and all the king's men, but you aren't going to put your life back together again. That's it. But the good news is that there's Jesus Christ. And through his blood, we can be reconciled. Just do this. Just do this. Entrust yourself by just saying to God, listen, I recognize that what's going on here isn't good. I recognize I'm broken. I recognize that everything is not all right. And believe me, if you do that, if you entrust yourself to God, things aren't going to get better all of a sudden. All your broken relationships it's not going to happen. But through experience, I know that there is great joy in entrusting yourself to the Lord. And that even where there is brokenness, we can see that there is still hope. So I invite the worship team to come back up. And we're going to sing a song of response.